And coming up, Craig Fouie will join us as well as Frank Sanders. But now, former Chicago Bears Buckeye Doug Plank joins us now. Doug at Rock, along with Manuj, Jimmy B. How you making out today?
How are you doing, Doug?
Well, it sounds like we got a whole team here on the radio.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And it's draft week, so we get an opportunity to catch up with you each and every year. So with that being said, you've told it multiple times, and I think it's worth hearing once again, your draft day. Very interesting how that all went down. Can you kind of walk us through that?
Yep. It's interesting that back then, there was no combine. So you literally were asked they would have a pro day at each school around the country, each NCAA university and college. And so they invited basically all the seniors that they thought had a chance of being drafted. I was not on that telephone call. And so it's amazing, the season ends. We had just lost to USC in the Rose Bowl. And I felt like that was the last game in my life. I was walking off the field at the Rose Bowl thinking, man, this was a great run, but, it's over. It's over right now. And plus, like I said, nobody asked me to come and work out, do any vertical jumps, do any timing, none of that sort of thing. And so why would I ever expect, when the draft took place, that I would get a call the second day? And I didn't even get the call. My roommate got it because he was anticipating getting drafted also, which he did later in the Jets in the 17th round. That was the thrill of my life. I came back. I didn't play very much my senior. I played in 5 games over 3 years at Ohio State.
Wow.
0 my junior year, 3 my sophomore year, and 2 my senior year. So why would I ever think I was always the next man up? Somebody had to get hurt before me for me to get on the field. So I mean, serious. I come home and my roommate goes, "Somebody called you from Chicago," and I go, "Yeah, that's pretty funny." He goes, "No. They said they were from the Bears." I looked at the number and I opened up the telephone book. Sure enough, it was the area code for in the Chicagoland area. I said, "Okay, it's worth returning the call." It ended up being the Chicago Bears. They said, "Doug, we saw you in one game your career at Northwestern in Evanston." They drove over to the game, watched it. We beat the heck out of Northwestern. But the kid in front of me, Tim Fox, had turned an ankle that day, and I played the rest of the game. And I got all the kickoff tackles, and I got an interception and forced a fumble. And I was voted the defensive player of the week. Guess what? The next week, I'm on the bench. I only ran down on 3 or 4 kickoffs. So why would I ever think anybody was going to call me? And, the 12th round sounds horrible now. Now that the rounds are less, you're thinking, oh, my gosh, Doug, how long was the draft? Was it like 4 or 5 days? No, it was only 2 days. In fact, they cut the draft time down on the picks. Those first rounders were like hours. When you get the 12th round, it's like you can pick 12 players in 1 hour. I think it was 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes by the time they got to the 12th round. And you know what, though? Here's the thing is, Dan, I had the privilege in practice of playing against what would eventually be first-round draft choices in the NFL, and I give Ohio State credit because without being around those guys, I would have never had any anticipation of what was going to be in store for me.
So what advice do you give a lot of those guys that may be lower round draft choices or free agents? I mean, here you were, they saw you at least for a game and they called you and brought you in. And isn't it something, Doug, you think about this? You got as a free agent, and then they end up naming a defense after your number. Yep. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right?
Honestly, you know what? I say this. It's more than your talent. You know what? Some people in that draft, whatever happens at the end of at the time the draft's over, someone is going to have a chip on their shoulder saying, "Give me a chance. Let me show you what I can do." And the Bears at least did that for me. They put me on a kickoff team right away. I was all on special teams starting we had 6 preseason games back then. So you really had opportunity to show yourself. And, and I was leading the team in tackles for 2 years at Ohio State. So I know I could kick butt on kickoff, and I had a good chance of making it, on special teams. But you know what? The safety got hurt about the 3rd week, Gary Lyle, who was a 5-year starter, and they came into the room, Dan, and I know I told you the story. Jack Pardee, our head coach, said, "Has anybody in here played free safety?" I never played free safety, but I put my hand up and waving it like the house was on fire. Hey, look at me, look at me. I played free safety my whole 4 years there. I hadn't played free safety at all. And they stuck me at practice. And in between practices, literally, I ran to the film room and watched what a free safety does.
Wow.
And then by the time the season started, I was the starting free safety for the Chicago Bears and led them in tackles for that year. And, the other thing, too, was, Ohio State's a tough place to play. I missed the tackle in the Michigan game. That was one of the games I had a chance to start my senior year, one of the two. And I missed the tackle because when you don't get in the game very much, you're so excited. You're running around. Oh, my gosh, I can't wait till I get in the game. I can't wait till I get in the game. You don't even want to tackle people. You want to run over them. You want a big explosion. So every single play that I was in there, I wasn't trying to tackle anybody. I was just trying to hit them as hard as I could, blow them up, force a fumble, whatever. And one time it was against a Michigan running back that I knocked him back 5 yards, but he never lost his balance. He ran 25 yards for a touchdown. Those coaches never forgave me.
Wow.
Because the next practice to get ready for the Rose Bowl, they called me over. No, Woody Hazen, our defensive coordinator, walked around in that warm-up period where everybody's 5 yards apart. They stopped in front of me and said, Doug, we want to talk to you. I'm thinking, in front of all these players? They said, we can't trust you anymore. You can't make tackles. You can't tackle anybody. And we're going to put you back on the kickoff team, and that's all you'll be doing for the Rose Bowl.
Wow.
And then they walked away. You know what? All those guys next to me said, Doug, that sucks. They shouldn't be telling you that in front of everybody else. That needs to be done in a room. That's just how that's how the royalty acted back then, in terms of this is the way it's going to be, son. Either you like it or you don't like it. It doesn't matter. We don't care who we talk to you in front of. Your butt is on special teams kickoff, and that's all you got.
Doug Plank is our guest on the Right Toyota guest line. Doug, take me to that opportunity that you got with the Bears. And everybody talks about when you're a rookie or maybe even a second-year player, when the light bulb goes on and you finally get clarity on what you are doing on the football field. Can you remember when that happened for you?
Yeah, you know what? It used to be 6. Thank God for 6 preseason games back then. Yeah, this was 1975. I know that was another era.
Yes, it was.
They wore different clothes. Cars were different. You had no seatbelts. You could do whatever you wanted. I mean, it was hilarious.
Smooth in the locker room.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, I get there, and I'll say one thing about Ohio State. I was practicing with first-round draft picks. I think there was 5 or 6 my senior year that got drafted in the first round, but there was a whole bunch of second, third, fourth, fifth rounders. You know what? And I was competing against these guys. So after like 2 weeks in training camp, and I knew Jack Pardee was one of those tough guys. He had cancer, beat cancer, all that sort of. He wanted somebody that was going to run over everybody and tackle them and be violent. And that was me. That was my frustrated self. And when they put me out there, like I said, I acted like I've always been there, even though I hadn't been. And you know what? You guys know this, Dan. At free safety, you line up at 10 yards deep, 10 to 12 yards, and you read the guards and the tackles, and you read run pass. I taught all this myself, by the way. You can do some damage. You're up to 20 miles an hour by the time you hit that line of scrimmage. And even though you're 205 pounds, it feels like 2,000 pounds because you're going to smack somebody right in the face mask. And you know what? When Jack Pardee saw that, my stock went way, way up. I went from 4th team. There was another guy drafted in the 8th round, another guy drafted in the 5th round in front of me. Within 2 weeks, I was in front of both those guys.
Wow.
And I'm sure they figured, you know what? Hey, 12th rounder, we only gave him $2,000 to sign. And, in a $17,000, $18,000, and $19,000 3-year contract, hey, he might be a good guy to keep around.
Doug, you're a badass as a player. You threw your body all over. How many surgeries have you had since your playing days?
You know what? I had a lot of surgeries just for stitches. I had basically over 100 stitches while I was playing there.
Wow.
And that's easy to get. If you have a major operation like knee surgeries, I've replaced 2 knees, 2 shoulders, and 1 hip, and I got 1 more hip to go in 30 days. So in the next 30 days, I'll have replaced 6 of my joints. I can't tell you how many concussions I had. You know, a lot of times back in the day, if you came out and said, "Dear coach, I'm sorry, I think I've got a concussion," they would laugh at you. And, you know, so I ended up going in the training room before any games, and I would get smelling salts. And back then they could pass it out, you know, whatever. You know, you could get whatever you wanted in there. And I went in there and got some smelling salts, and I tucked it in my pants, that belt around your pants. You know, so whenever I needed it, man, I could just reach down there, crack that thing open, and man, stick that up to my nose. Oh my gosh, you talk about a rush. Man, that you smelled a couple of those things. I don't care what happened to you. You were awake. And, you know, so that's, you know, and it was a whole different protocol back then. Helmets, obviously. You know, although I did find out one thing, you know, my wife's brother is a neurosurgeon down in Florida. And he said, "Doug, you know what? You can wear any helmet you want. It doesn't really matter. The interior of your brain, it sloshes around inside your skull. And every time you run 20 miles an hour, then you stop within a second, half a second, quarter of a second." He goes, "Your brain is still moving." So that's why I say this is a tough sport, and you have to accept the consequences, which I did. And, you know, and I got some spinal stenosis just because when spearing was allowed. You know, if people now say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you were spearing people." Well, it was okay back then. You know, you did it. And how else are you going to get like guys like Earl Campbell on the ground? You know, you got to spear him places he doesn't want to be speared. And and I did that, and I knocked him out for at least half the game that we played him at Soldier Field. And because I saw him just destroy other linebackers from the Rams, the Denver Broncos. I mean, he was a beast. And, you know, you run into guys like that, man, you think your life is over.
Doug, we appreciate you, man. Thanks so much, and good luck with the surgery next week.
Well, thank you. And like I said, I'm a big Cardinal fan. You cannot be one here. I think they have so many good players on that team. You know, with the record they had, I think they were on the curve of just doing some great things, you know, right there at the point. And I'm really rooting for them. I think, you know, they've got some really good players, and, you know, they could maybe get helped out by adding some more flavor to the mix. But, you know, it's about time. You know, it's like, you know, I don't care. A team that hasn't been there very long, man, you got my vote. You got my support. I want you to be in there and doing all the right things, and it'll make it so much better here for the Valley.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Doug Plank joining us here on Rock Minuch with Jimmy B. You can follow him on Twitter, X at DougPlank46. Craig Fouie, ABC 15 next, followed by Frank Sanders right here on ESPN 620.
Life's a sprint,